Okay, good afternoon. Thank you all for joining us for the next installment of our Resource Network webinar series. As always, we're excited to be bringing the webinar series to you. And today it's the topic that is spoken about the most in our peer groups, whether it's the largest, most successful peer group member we have, or some of the smaller guys that are trying to get there. Sales is always the number one topic. All of the presenters speaking in our series throughout the year have made a commitment to provide our membership with actionable insight into areas that can help them grow or otherwise impact their bottom line in a positive way. While webinars like this are the start, they also have provided more granular content when they visit each individual peer group. Before I introduce the speakers, I should always answer that question that's asked over and over again in every webinar we do. Yes, indeed, this will be recorded. We'll send you all an email after the webinar with a copy of the slides and a link to the MSP-Ignite YouTube channel where you can watch this presentation over again or share it with anyone you like. During the presentation, you'll all be muted. Please use the Q&A button to ask questions along the way. I know some of you try and use the chat. Please try and use Q&A. They get lost. I'm not that bright. I need to follow one place only. So let's keep it out of the chat, keep it into the Q&A. Our keynote speaker today is Robb Rogers, the CEO and co-founder of Osprey Strategic Research. Robb is an expert in B2B sales, sales training, and sales management. He's really well known among our members and is doing a fantastic job helping those that he's working with develop and build their sales processes. Of course, as you all know, webinars like this don't take place without the assistance of our valued sponsors. Today, that sponsor is Unitrends MSP, and I'm excited to have for the first time with us from Unitrends MSP, the new general manager, Naj Raza. Naj, good afternoon.
Thanks so much, Steve. Good afternoon, everyone. As Steve mentioned, I just recently joined Unitrends MSP as a general manager, so I'm super excited. Just to give you a little bit of a background on me, I've been in the IT channel now working with MSPs for 10 years. And specifically, I spent 7 of those years working at Datto. I started off as employee number 18 and worked my way up, was vice president of international operations there for 6 years. And then ended up in 2017 when the acquisition happened. I left with a few of the guys to start our own cybersecurity startup, which was also 100% channel only, focused on MSPs. Did that for the past 3 years, and I had this fantastic opportunity to return back into the BCDR space. And I personally feel that there's a ton of opportunity there. So what better way to prove that than me jumping back into this? So just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started here. I know that the entire MSP space and the entire being an MSP, it's a journey. Specifically, even when you embark on a specific vertical to have subject matter expertise on, such as business continuity, everyone's at different parts of that journey. So for this presentation, I've aimed to keep it to resound with everybody, but I will define some of the terms. And if it's a little elementary for anyone, you'll have to just excuse that. So without further ado, let's jump right into this. So I'm here today to present to you how business continuity and disaster recovery is not only a huge opportunity, but how you as an MSP can use that as a catalyst for growth. Now, as Market and Markets had released a study in 2018, they predicted that DRaaS, disaster recovery as a service, is going to grow at a rate of 42%. Whereas backup, which most MSPs that I've spoken with, they tend to lead with saying, here's a backup solution to their end users, as opposed to saying, here, I'm a subject matter on disaster recovery as a service, and let's tailor our approach to each end user within that framework. So not only, one of the questions you may ask is, well, this could be in the enterprise space, or is this really applicable to me in the SMB space? And absolutely. This is a fantastic study. I highly recommend everybody download it. It's available on the IT Glue website, and it's the 2020 IT Glue Global MSP Benchmark Report. This report looked at 1,500 MSPs, your peers, operating in very similar verticals and spaces in terms of market size as you. And overwhelmingly, you can see 60% of those MSPs that were surveyed said that their new revenue opportunities are coming from disaster recovery as a service opportunities. I was shocked to see it's even more than cybersecurity. So the million-dollar question is, how do you capitalize on this opportunity? How do you take this opportunity and make it work for you? So what I've done here is I've made a quick three-step framework that we can look at this through. And it all really starts with how you're positioning to your end users this entire opportunity, right? And most importantly, there isn't a one size fits all for every end user. I was just speaking with an MSP and he said, look, Naj, I get it. I have a bank and I have an antique shop. I'm not going to sell the bank and the antique shop the same solution. They have different budgets. They have different, what we refer to as recovery time objectives and recovery point objectives, RTOs and RPOs. So we totally get that. And here's where stepping through the end users to talk about their data is so critical, because we can make those discoveries there and still make sure we're represented as a subject matter expert. So one of the conversations to have with your end users when you're doing this data discovery process is talk about how the landscape has shifted for data. Initially, it was all on-premise. Now with COVID-19, as everyone's well aware, you have remote workers that have laptops that may need to be backed up, or we're seeing a huge transition into Office 365 in the public cloud. Now, many people think BCDR, disaster recovery, natural disasters. That, as you can see, is a very small percentage of this. From CRN magazine, we see that almost 50% of all of those instances where recovery is required are coming from human error, software, or hardware failures. That's what's most common. Of course, the other side of it is ransomware. Almost all end users know about this, and MSPs are also well aware at the threat that ransomware poses, whether it's the FBI or Department of Homeland Security. Ransomware is a real thing that can cause quite a few issues for end users with interruption to their data. Now, the other aspect of it is we see some end users, they say, oh, well, I don't really need any true BCDR or backup. I've moved completely to the cloud in Office 365. And the reality is that 77% of companies, according to the survey, have faced some sort of a loss of data, even though they're in the SaaS application. And that's simply because SaaS vendors, if you read their EULAs and these terms, once again, another great item to talk about with your end users about the risks that currently exist, they only cover their mistakes, right? So a quick checklist here to keep in top of mind for them is the risks posed are all on human side within your environment, a programmatical error that could occur, or even something like malicious insiders. Someone gets fired and they end up mass deleting items and leaving, and you have to be able to account for those types of risks and have a mitigation strategy. So now that you've been able to walk through the entire data discovery process, right? And just to recap, you're doing this not as a, hey, let me sell you backup, right? You're presenting this as, hey, let's go through your data to understand this, to understand what are your needs, what will happen if a disaster occurs, and how I'll be able to support you. And you match that in, once again, based on the requirements of the end user. Now, here's a 5-step critical best practices that I share with everyone, right? And as many of you are aware, and some MSPs that I've spoken with, I was glad to see have transformed onto that journey of becoming subject matter experts on BCDR. That was less so when I was first in this industry, 2012, 2013. Number one is to have a BCDR run book or disaster recovery plan. This is a great opportunity to even engage with your existing customers, even if they're not looking to buy something right now. If you don't already have a disaster recovery plan, make sure you create it. And we have a fantastic webinar that's going to be coming up in Q4, where we're going to share out one of the best disaster recovery plans that we've purchased and we've licensed to be able to distribute. And we're going to take MSPs through that. And by the end of the webinar, you'll be able to create your own disaster recovery book and replicate that. Now, the second thing is RPO, RTO. It's very important that it's not just lingo, but it's a key to being able to understand which end users to focus your time on, because those that have a higher or more demanding RTO and recovery time objective and recovery point objective, those are ones that are going to be where there's revenue, right? And especially depending on which product you're using, there's a product for each one. Having local failover, cloud-based system failover where you virtualize will meet the demands of very stringent RTO and RPO policy. Whereas just having backup for, let's say, a laptop that doesn't really have any critical data, that's going to have a different RTO, RPO. The other aspect is security, and there's really two aspects to this. One, not just having encryption within your backups. I'm sure plenty of you have heard the horror stories of ransomware encrypting backups that are attached via Windows share. There's a lot to do there, and there's a lot of hardening that needs to happen as well. And then, of course, the other big aspect is what do you do if there is a ransomware attack or a virus that takes down the network? So being able to position your subject matter expertise on the security side. And then most importantly, simulate an outage, right? Let's go through for one of your clients on a quarterly basis or whatever cadence works for you. Take them through that entire process. So one, you're top of mind, they're seeing your value. And most importantly, in our jobs, we realize that is going to happen at some point. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And this is the best way to be prepared. It's your drills. And then of course, the NIST cybersecurity framework, and here's where this kind of comes all full circle. Any MSP that's using the NIST cybersecurity framework to make sure that best practices are there and to protect yourself if there's ever any type of claim that has to happen either on cybersecurity insurance side or HIPAA or anything like that, having a NIST-based cybersecurity framework practice will mitigate some of the liability that exists. So part of that is a data discovery. That's actually the first step in that process, is to understand that. So this is where you can wrap it all together and show your journey as an MSP being their go-to partner for not just BCDR, disaster recovery as a service, but now you get to pull in cybersecurity as well, which we all know is a very, very important topic these days. And the other items that many MSPs don't think about is if they have, let's say, one of these more advanced BCDR solutions like the ones Unitrends offers, or other companies offer it as well with local virtualization, you can do a lot with that local VM. Not only can you do patch testing on it, but you can also potentially use that as a sandbox for a security use case. So let's say there's a critical file that you essentially need to detonate. You could do that within a virtual machine of a backup copy without having to worry about causing any issues there. And then, of course, as I mentioned before, it's not just about talking about the recovery side of it. It's talking about the entire plan, the ability to simulate that plan and to have that readiness, really. So just to recap, we've talked about data discovery and why that's important, not just from a security practice methodology, but also from showing your expertise in the BCDR and really capitalizing on that disaster recovery as a service opportunity. We've also talked about what are the best practices. Now let's talk about, how do you do this? There's a lot to this. There's a lot of moving parts, and I fully understand MSPs are generalists, right, for the most part. And so how do you embark on this journey, and most importantly, how are you successful? And I'm a firm believer that there's no reason to recreate the wheel, right? There are partners, vendors that you can work with, such as Unitrends MSP. And part of the first step in making sure you pick the right partner is, what's their level of commitment? What's their level of commitment to the MSP space? Are they 100% channel only? And where are they in terms of educating me and helping me on my journey for things that matter, such as sales enablement, marketing enablement, knowledge transfer, or even thought leadership? And so that's very important. There's, like I said, there's multiple vendors in the space, and really you should evaluate each one, even your current vendors, to see, are they really are they meeting your demands that you have there? So on the product side, when we talk about the shifting data landscape, I'm proud that Unitrends MSP has a product for each one of these scenarios, whether it's on-premise, a full turnkey appliance that takes all the guesswork out and you can just simply go deploy it, and it's the top of the line model that will allow you to have full local failover and have a true disaster recovery solution. Or like I said, that antique shop, which is just a couple of computers at one location. We've got a direct-to-cloud backup option for that. Or most importantly, with this transfer that's happened in O365 and OneDrive, we've got plenty of SaaS backup options there with a company that Kaseya has purchased, including Unitrends, which is Spanning. And these all fit into what we call the unified continuity product lineup. Now, the other big piece about this comes down to automation, right? Automation is critical in order for you to be able to scale, in order for you to be able to do all of these items that we talked about. When we talk about RPO, RTO, sitting there manually calculating this stuff doesn't work. So, what are some ways that a vendor can help you with that? So with UMSP, with our solutions, we have a full recovery assurance testing battery that exists within each appliance. And so many vendors will just take a quick screen grab of a login screen of your virtual machine. We go a step further. What we have is an automated system with a library of scripts that can run to see, hey, if I did have to virtualize this machine, what happens? Is networking there? Is my SQL data there? So it goes a step further. RPO, RTO calculation, we have reports which will automatically mount this machine as part of recovery assurance testing and will print out and say, if you had a disaster, this is your RPO, RTO. Of course, backup reports, I'm a big believer in backup scorecards. Our solution can generate that for you, as well as having the partner that can help you in an offsite failover test. When you do that every quarter test and simulation, take advantage of that with your vendor. And then a cool new product that we have, or a cool new feature that we have, is Helix, which exists on the production machine and can self-heal backups. Now, I think the most important, that's all from a product perspective. How do you get enabled by your vendor? The other aspect is sales and marketing support. So we have something that's called Powered Services. If you haven't heard about it, please contact me. I'm happy to take you through a demo of that. This service creates entire run books and plans for you to be able to go and find new opportunities. And not just that, but you can do full lead management, and a staff member from Kaseya, from the Powered Services team, will help you with this. So that being said, that's pretty much the full gamut on what Kaseya, what Unitrends MSP can do for you, and specifically how we can help you in this journey. And I'd like to thank you all for your time. Now, one quick thing is we do have a promotion for any new customer that doesn't have a relationship with us. We're offering 30% off for your first purchase. All you have to do is just contact me today. My information is available through Steve, and I'm more than happy to get you into that program and see how we can help you. So, all right, with that, let me now turn it over to Robb Rogers.
Okay, thank you very much, Raj. I really appreciate everybody being on here. Thank you, Steve, for inviting me here today and being able to share what I am doing here at OSR and share with everybody. I kind of teach you guys what we are doing here at OSR so you can be able to do this yourselves. So what do we do here? So again, my name is Robb Rogers, and with my business partner, Tim McNeil, we own OSR Manage. We do the recruiting, we do the training, and we do the everyday management of sales reps to grow MSP's sales departments. Whether that is a person that is, a hunter or a farmer, doesn't matter. If you need somebody to help you grow your inside business, go deep and wide, we will do that. If you need somebody that's going out there to prospect new business, we're going to do that as well. And today what I'm going to be showing you is how to get yourself past level 2 and level 3 of your sales OML. There's a lot of OMLs out there that focus on, financials and operations and services and leaderships and all that. But we focus on only the sales department and growing the strategy and the tactics behind taking you from the yes we can type of owner all the way to level 5. And so today's conversation is going to be, how do you get yourself out of that principal-led scenario into level 3, and then today we're going to teach you how to do level 4. So in owner-led, that is where you have about a 1% monthly gross revenue that you're devoting to marketing. If you follow me, I suggest that you put it into its own bank account. 1% just sits there and you find ways to work it. And on the owner level side, you're right around $500,000 a year. You're trying to break through to that 750 spot, and you're trying to get to that 8% of your the gross revenue per month is put into your sales effort. And it goes into its own bank account, and you try and find ways to invest that money to grow on the back end. So in that owner level part, it's super difficult. It's very difficult to break through and get to level 3, which is right around that 750,000, 1 million mark and above, because that's where you can get your first salesperson. You're no longer relying on that outsourcing to lead gen companies. That's very inefficient, but it needs to be done. You've got to find ways to bring in revenue. So that's what we're going to talk about here today. Number 1, how do you hire the right rep? And number two, how do you manage that rep? That is the critical piece. And I'm not going to tell you the strategies alone. I'm also going to give you the tactics on how we do it every single day. In this industry right now, I've recruited, trained, and managed probably about 500 different MSP salespeople across the nation, including Canada. And these are the things that I have found to be the best ways to lower my risk. That's what it's all about when you're hiring a salesperson, minimizing your risk of a bad investment. So that's what we're going to talk about here today. And I'm going to give you kind of the bullet points that I use that I think are the biggest gems for you, because there's a lot of resources out there online where you can go out there and ask the smart questions when you're talking to a sales rep, or you're doing an interview. What kind of questions do you ask? I'm not really going to go into there because there's a lot of stuff out there. These bullet points that I have on this screen right here are the number one qualifying things that you need to find out, that you need to make sure that you're using before you move them to the assess stage. And one quick caveat before we move forward: do not skimp when you're looking at a rep. Do not decide you're not going to call their references, because who's going to give you a bad reference? Don't skimp on the part that calls on their work history. I promise you that you're going to have to do it. Just this year, I had a reference tell me for an employee that I was looking to hire for a client, don't hire this person because they are a druggie. It happens. So you've got to do all the things. Don't cut the corners. Invest the hard work now and reduce your risk of making a bad hire. Okay, so there's two main types of salespeople out there. There's the people that work on your current clients, right? Those are the farmers, the account representatives. And the number one thing that I can tell you that I look for in this person is I hire the smile and I train the skill. Now, hiring the smile, I don't mean you're looking for beautiful people. I don't mean that at all. I mean that person that has that natural infectious smile. I don't mean all the way up to the bubbly stage, but that infectious person that you can just feel their personality straight through the phone. Because the farmer's number one goal, just like a waiter or a waitress at a restaurant, is to give number one, a great client experience. And then number two, upsell. So the number one thing that you're going to have to look for when you're looking at this person and you're interviewing them is, do they have an infectious personality that draws you in? And that will go right through the phone to your clients, and every time start to build that relationship. And that's the number one thing that I can offer to you for the farmer. The hunter. The hunter is a bit different. And the hunter is I'm a little more aggressive when I'm speaking to a hunter and I'm doing the interview stages. And I do my interview stages in 4 different parts. My screening, then I do my sales interview, and that's either through Zoom or that's face-to-face, depending on your territory right now with all the COVID stuff going on. And then after the selling skills, then I do a culture interview, and that's where I bring in other people, and then I tie in my core values to that sales rep and make them answer questions based on my core values. And then the 4th stage is the DISC profile, which we'll talk about in a minute. But the hunter, the number one thing that you have to find out is, can this person handle an objection when they're in a stressful environment? And will they turn that objection into a solution sell? And it's just one question, and I ask it every single time, and I ask it in the exact same way, and it's a running joke in our company. But what I do is, if I'm in my selling skills interview and I'm talking to this rep and I like this person and I'm going to move them to my culture interview, before we finish up, I say to them, I look at their resume and I grab my pen, and I do this every time. And then I kind of look pensive as I'm looking at their resume, and I go through the resume, and then I stop and I look back at them and I say this: you know what? You have a very storied career, and you are to be commended on your selling career so far. You just have a fantastic resume. So I'm building them up, and I'm making them feel like they have done a good job. Because remember, they're seeking approval from me, because that's the job, right? They're trying to find out if I'm going to approve what they're doing. So I build them up. And then as soon as I build them up saying that they have a fantastic resume, I say, but, and here's where I sweep them out at the knees. I say, but based on what you have here, I'm just not sure that your experience is going to translate into what we're doing here. I'll say it again. Based on your experience, I don't know if it's going to be able to translate into what we're doing here. I don't care if they're coming from my biggest competitor. I don't care if they've been in the MSP industry for 4 billion years. You say what we're doing here. And so what just happened there was you gave them an objection that is going to stress them out a little bit, because what are they trying to do in essence? They're trying to sell you a $40 to $50 to $70,000 a year contract so they can work with you, which is the same thing that they're going to be doing to your prospects. So if they can't handle an objection in a high stress environment when they know the product inside and out, which is them, then they're not going to be able to do it for you later. So here, one of two things are going to happen when you say that. So, you say, I just don't know if you're going to be able to translate your experience into what we're doing here, and then you stop. And you say, what do you think about that? One of two things is going to happen. Either they're going to say this, which is bad, and I want you to listen to the structure here, not the actual words. They're going to say, I hear where you're coming from, Steve, but can you tell me a little bit more about your training? So what they did was they empathize, which is the #1 rule in sales. They empathize with you. And then what they did was they confused and redirected it right back to you. That's a fail. That's a hard fail. That's an immediately out. I will not consider that person. So again, I'm going to give you the structure. You empathize, and then he confused and redirected and put it back on you. In solution selling, he just made you, the prospect, come up with the solution and tell you about his training. That doesn't help. That's bad. But the great reps will say, hey, I hear where you're coming from, Steve, but I'd like to bring you back to my resume and show you when I worked at ABC Company for 4 years, I had never sold widgets before. And within the first 6 months, I was already up to goal. And within the first year, I was already at the top 25% of my company. So I think that I'll be able to translate my knowledge into this. So what he did was he offered his solution based on his product knowledge and his products, right? His features and his transitions and his benefits. So here's the structure. He gave an empathy, and then he provided you a solution based on his product knowledge to you. If you find that person, you will minimize your risk of a bad hire, and it will elevate you into a great hire. So that is the biggest piece of advice I can give you on the recruiting side. The second biggest piece of advice that I can give you on the recruiting side is do a disc profile for everybody that makes it past the culture interview. You need to have one more interview at the end, and this can be on the phone if you want, but I track the disc profiles for every single person that I have recruited, whether they got the job or not. And I track every single person on all the disc profiles that they do, every number. And if they got a job with me, I track the prospecting that they do per month, the amount of appointments they got, the amount of decision makers they spoke to, and amount of deals they closed. And I can tell you that on a general number, right, there's always outliers, but on a general number, you will see that the farmers have a high steadiness and high influence, and they will always be right in here in the supporter, the relator, and the promoter. And the high D personalities, the high dominance and influencers, the hunters, they always end up right in here. The successful ones do. So do a disc profile on these people. Talk to Steve. Steve will be able to help you out there. Don't do a freebie. Don't do those free ones. Invest in it, because every dollar you're investing on the front end is you're saving on the back end when it's a bad hire. And that's how I think I have found the best way to get these sales reps. When a client comes to me, they're usually in stage 3. And they have usually failed on between 3 and 7 is the highest that I've ever had salespeople that they've hired over time. You can get this into about 75% success rate just by doing these things that I just gave you right here. So I encourage you, do every step. Don't skimp on any step. Do the references, do the work history. Make sure you ask all those questions, and 100% make sure you're getting an infectious personality in your farmer, and you're getting somebody who can handle objections naturally by going back to themselves, for the hunters. Okay, so now we're going to get to my fun part. This is the thing that I've been doing for, after I got out of the Army. I've been doing this for 25 years now, building scorecards and measuring reps, sales reps, by analyzing the data and being able to manage to the numbers. I have taken the system that I use with all my MSPs across the nation, and I have taken it out of our systems, and I have built an Excel spreadsheet for you guys to use. It's the exact same thing that we do every single day, and I'm going to be giving it to you right now. But it's complicated. It's complicated to look at Excel spreadsheet. So I want to talk about it from a bird's eye view before we start getting into the nitty gritty. So in my system, I grade everybody by two different things. I grade them on prospecting. So you're going to see a major prospecting column with a bunch of sub columns underneath it. So there's going to be, part of it right there. And then the other side is going to be the active sales cycle, the active sales funnel. And that's the other part. So prospecting plus their active sales cycle is going to equal their utilization rate. This utilization rate is the same for every single rep in this nation that I am managing or have managed in the past. They are all based on a 100-point system, and I'm going to give you the KPIs that you should be managing too. And if you're not meeting these metrics, something's wrong and it needs to be looked into. Okay, so this is my daily management piece that I'm going to be showing you. We do three things. We track employees daily in a morning huddle. We measure them weekly in our pipeline review, and then we grade them monthly. Okay, so this is the daily piece in the bird's eye view. Prospecting, active sales cycle equals utilization rate. The next piece is the monthly grading side. On the monthly grading side, you're going to have to enter into the spreadsheet three major numbers. How much MRR did they bring in this month? And this is their monthly number. So if they sold a $3,000 deal, and the average right now that I'm seeing is between $2,500 and $4,000, depending on your territory. If you're selling a $3,000 deal times 36 months, we would put 3,000 into this number. You're also going to track their project labor and the hardware and software gross profit. This isn't for commission. I don't mean this is as a commission, but what did this rep bring in to you so you can use and figure out ways to use inside your company? So that's one of the things we're going to have to do on a monthly basis, and I'm going to show you how to do it. We need to manage the three warning lines. And again, I show this to the rep every single day. It's all transparent. The first warning track, or the first warning line that they're going to hit, is going to be after about 4 months. So here's how I manage reps. So I look at my investment that I put into a bank account. So I put 8% of my gross revenue per month into a bank account. And I say, I'm going to invest that not into the stock market where I'm going to get about 7%, hopefully. I'm going to invest it in my company. And so I want a return on investment, but when do I pull out? And this is how I measure when to pull out. The first line is after 4 months. So if we have a rep, and we're just going to use easy numbers, and they cost us $5,000 with our direct and indirect cost, everything, our total COGS. They cost us $5,000 a month in the first month that they were hired. In month 2, we are now $10,000 in debt. This rep is $10,000 in debt to us. And hopefully they're starting to get appointments, everything's starting to loosen up. But then in month 3, now they're $15,000 in the hole to us. If they get to 4 times our investment, then we're going to give them a verbal warning. And I'm going to show you this on the graph as well. So once we give them a verbal warning, we have to see where the red flags are in the system. Then we're going to have to build a little plan for them. And the second is going to be a written, and we're going to verify that plan, making sure that we're heading towards the right goals. And the third and final line, we are going to measure and see if they have a good work ethic. If they have a good work ethic and they're meeting everything, but just nothing's dropped yet, they haven't sold anything yet, then we're going to look at their pipe for the month. And we're going to take 25% of that, which is usually what a rep can close. And we're going to see if that pushes them back over the red line. And if it does, we're going to give them 3 more months. We're going to continue our investment because we see hope, we see light at the end of the tunnel. So, all right, so let's jump into this scorecard, everybody. All right. So this is the scorecard that I built for this presentation. And I built it, again, if you can see it, I built it in the prospecting side. I built it in the active selling side, your funnel, your active funnel, and then it all equals the salesperson's utilization rate based on a 100-point score system. This 100-point score system is being used with every single rep that I am managing. And the people who are successful manage these numbers. The people who don't, they usually weed themselves out. So the strategy is we want to get people to 100 points and we want to meet these KPIs. The tactics that we're going to use is how do we measure these people and when do we start looking at them to say, okay, we need to look at this red flag and do something about it. Okay, so I'm going to go from left to right and explain every column in here for you. So you get your first date, and remember, every single day with a salesperson, you need to do the Rockefeller habit of a morning huddle every single morning. It takes you probably about 10 minutes. Part of it is banter. So what I usually do is I banter for a little bit, and then I say, okay, great, tell me what you did yesterday. And then we go straight through this. And then I say, okay, what do you have on the docket for today? They explain what they have on the docket for the day. And then I say, give me your headlines. Do you have any headlines that I need to know about? Good, bad, or ugly, I don't care. I want to know about, is there anything I need to know about on the client or prospect side? Is there anything I need to know about on the company side or employee side? Is there anything I need to know about you? And that's it. And it doesn't always have to be good. It can be bad. You just need to know as the owner because you're not involved every single time. And that usually takes about 10 minutes per rep. Okay, so we go in, we're talking to them, and the first thing you're going to put in here is your average talk time and your total talk time and your total on in their CRM. I use Contact Science for my company, and this is all automated within our system. But if you have to go to your VoIP provider and look at this, make somebody in your company do it for you, and just make sure you put this in because it's vitally important that you know how long they're spending on the phone when they're talking to prospects right now. Okay, so in this first date, September 21st, the person made 80 calls. They didn't make any door knocks yesterday, and they spoke to a total of 80 prospects so they could try and improve their business. Unfortunately, they only spoke to one person. They got one email, they did one LinkedIn connection to that decision maker, and then they got one contract end date. Contract end dates. I built this system 10 years ago when I got into this industry, and it is the difference between somebody who is going to be successful long-term in this industry and somebody who is not. So what I saw was when I came into this industry was they would have all these great conversations with the decision maker, and the decision maker would say, hey, you know what, now's not the right time. I'm kind of in a contract. I'm all set. I'm happy. I don't care. My friends, like there's all sorts of reasons, but the long answer is we're all set. We're not going to do business with you right now. And then, I would find that everybody would say, hey, well, do you mind if I reach back out in 6 months? So who cares if you reach back out in 6 months? So what I'm going to tell you to say to these people, to your reps or to yourself, this also works for the owner who has to do the prospecting themselves right now. After you get through the conversation with the decision maker and you try and get through a couple of questions and try and uncover a little bit of pain, and they finally say no. You want 3 attempts at the apple before you go for the contract end date. Instead of saying, let me call you back in 6 months, you're going to say, hey, when does your contract come up for review? And at that time, what we can do is we can show you the value that we provide, because technology is changing very fast. And what was the value a few years ago is not going to be the value now. So the key pieces of that puzzle are, when was the last time you did a review? If we're going to do a review, I want to do it with you to give you an apples to apples comparison, because apples to apples comparisons have to be done every few years. Review every few years. And that's the sell. And you'll get between 30 and 40% of every single decision maker will say yes to that because it's a benefit to them. They're going to have to tell their boss that they did the review. Okay. So contract end dates are vitally important. And here's the sell to the rep when they do this. 50% of these contract end dates turn into actionable appointments when the contract is on the table. So it's vitally important that they ask for this and that you track this and you make sure this is happening. Because if you got 50% guaranteed appointments, you're going to know the decision maker. You're going to know how big this company is, how, they already have a budget, and the budget is on the table. So it's vitally important that you use these contract end dates. Okay, moving on. Network appointments. I track network appointments, and a network appointment is a BNI circle of influence appointment. BNI works really, really good in some territories, and it sucks bad in others. It depends on the BNI group, it depends on the territory, and it mostly depends on the rep and how much time that they're going to invest into building their circle of influence. So I can't give you any guidance on this one, except to say, test it out in your market, see if you have the right kind of rep that can do this, and if they can, it's going to be valuable. It works well when it's worked well. So as you can see, I'm moving from left to right. And in my system, I start weighting things the closer we get to the proposal meeting. So like a network appointment is not worth that many points. A company generated lead is worth more points. And as we move closer and closer to a win, the rep is rewarded with doing more in the active sales cycle. But let's take a step back here, and I want to talk to you about company generated leads. The company generated lead. If you receive a lead in your company, I don't care how it was received. I don't care if it was through your marketing efforts, through your organic SEO, your paid SEO, smoke signals. I don't care how you got it. If it came to you and you give it to your employee, your sales rep, the sales rep needs to pay a 25% VIG back to you and the marketing budget so they can get more company generated leads. Out of 500 plus sales reps, I have never had a sales rep say, I don't like this idea. They love this idea. They're willing to pay 25% back to you because they didn't have to do 10 to 15 hours worth of prospecting, which is the most terrible part of the job. And they got a free lead. Company generated leads closed at between 50 to 75%, and they'll close within 3 months. A rep's appointment that he builds himself is going to take 3 to 9 months to close, and they're only going to close it at 20 to 25%. So they love these leads, and they need to pay back to the bucket, the marketing engine, to get that lead to keep coming. So make sure you keep in mind, company generated leads, the reps have to pay 25%. Okay? All right. Right place, right time appointments. These are the main appointments that the rep is working on every single day. They're making 80 calls. They're speaking to decision makers. They finally get an appointment, and it took them a year and a half to get this appointment. The rep has to keep calling these same appointments because you're in a territory with a 40-mile radius or 50 or 60-mile radius. You're in a finite territory. So you don't get these just leads coming out of nowhere. You have to keep working the same lead, and you've got to build that wedge over time. I know, back when I was in the industry and my business partner, it took him 2 years to get into this huge account. He gave them bottles of wine. He gave them leap day cards. He gave them all sorts of marketing stuff. And it took him 2 years, but he finally built that wedge and landed this huge account because he took the time and he kept making the calls and trying to find different ways to, splash through all the white noise. At the end of the month, you're going to want company generated leads and right place, right time. These are your MSP leads, your monthly recurring revenue leads, and they need to be at a minimum of 8 per month once this rep is up and running. In the beginning, when your rep's kind of new, you can include projects in there. I don't mind if you include projects in there. So a project, if your company does projects, you usually put minimums on those projects. Number one minimum I usually do is $2,500 a month in project labor revenue at a minimum. And they have to have an MSP opportunity within 1 year. So those are kind of like what I use as a grading system. If it meets those standards, then I'll allow it to be booked. If not, it's not really worth our time. But that's my metric, so you guys have to do what you feel is appropriate for you and your business there. Then on-site discovery is the actual meeting that you're going on. When they go on the meeting, click, they put a 1 in there. If they go and move it to a technical meeting, if they do a technical meeting that day, they put it here. A proposal meeting, same thing. It has to be the actual meeting that they're doing. And at the end of their day, their points tally up over here. And that's what they did. Now, here's the caveat. sometimes there's active BD work that isn't accounted for in this system. So for example, if you're doing a prep meeting for a proposal and you've got your sales engineer in there, you got the owner in there, and you got the sales rep in there, and you guys are having a half an hour meeting to make sure everything's right before you move forward, then that goes over in this column right here. And this is BDT time non-accounted for. And it's literally, you get 1 point per half an hour. Keep in mind, do not put other meetings in here. Don't put your sales meeting in here. Don't put your corporate meeting in here, your admin meeting, your marketing meeting. All those meetings are non-business development. They have nothing to do with this rep trying to make you money, and they need to stay out of here. They get accounted for in the notes, clearly, but they do not get put into BDT. Do not let a rep put anything that is non-active deal working or active prospect working into here, because you need to find out if you are doing a better or worse job than your peers. You do not want to be over 10% on non-BDT. I've already ripped out breaks, and I've already ripped out lunches. So this is just going to show if you have too much non-BDT interference into that rep's day for them to be effective versus all of your peers. Okay. All right, so that is how this sheet works. Now I want to talk to you about, how do we measure this rep on a day-over-day basis and a month-over-month basis. So again, I have put down here, if you guys can see this, and this is, Steve has this, so you guys will have access to this as well. I have every single metric that we monitor that is being monitored, even in COVID times, being monitored that your rep needs to be within. And if they are not, it's a red flag, and you need to figure out if it's the rep's fault or if it's your fault, and you need to look into it. So let's take a look at this rep here. First thing we're going to look at is the GKES, the Gatekeeper Effectiveness Score. How able is this rep to speak to a gatekeeper, get past that gatekeeper, and have a meaningful conversation with somebody who can move the ball forward? And that could be a decision maker, it could be an influencer. Both of those are interchangeable, right? You don't always get to the final check signer, right? You have to go through stages. So if you're speaking to the director of IT, even though it's a terrible place to be in, that is a DM that's trying to help you get the ball forward. So this person needs to be within 5 to 8%. And this works all over the nation. This works in New York, where I'm at. This works in Nevada. This works in Florida. It works everywhere. They will be within this range. These are the minimum ranges that they need to be. The upper ranges are right around 15% is the best in class. But it really depends on where you're at. Georgia is a heck of a lot easier to get past the gatekeeper than New York City. Okay, so we measure this person every single day. And the first day, September 21st, they came in, they had an average talk time of 30 seconds, a total talk time of 40 minutes. They made 80 calls. They only spoke to one decision maker. They sent out an email to that decision maker. They connected on LinkedIn, and they got an appointment. I apologize. They got a contract end date. Okay, so then, if we were to grade or judge them, this would be pretty bad. I would be really upset about that. But we measure weekly. So we let it go. And then we check on day 2, they did a minute and 10 seconds. A minute and 10 seconds on a prospecting call is about the minimum on the averages. So that's not bad. Okay, all right, I'm happy. They made 80 calls again, and they spoke to 4 decision makers. This is your typical day right here. This is what your typical day will look like for a rep. And look, if they're only making 80 calls and they didn't get anything else except for one contract end date, they didn't do enough on that day. So they were going to have to step it up a little bit on the prospecting side to get more into the active selling cycle. So if you go through the entire week, you can see what this rep did and how they got through. So now let's measure this rep on a weekly basis. So if you highlight all this, you'll be able to see that even though they did terrible on this day, they didn't do well here, they overdid here, they got through it until finally, at the end of the week, they made 100 points. They were on the average. This is the minimum benchmark. This is not the upper level. No rep should be below 100 points per day. If they're below 100 points per day, you are more inefficient than all of your peers. Okay, so now let's go back down here and let's just look at our totals right now. So far this week, this rep made 400 calls and they spoke to 21 decision makers. So that's 5%, which means, okay, they're at the minimums, but they're within the metrics of their peers, and this is a good thing. Okay, I'm happy for this week. A little upset about day one, but everybody has a bad day. Then I would look, once they get to a decision maker, if they speak to a decision maker, what are the odds that they're going to be able to get traction out of that decision maker? How are their peers doing? Their peers are getting about 30%. Every time they speak to a decision maker, 30% of the time they're getting a contract end date. So if your rep is not meeting that, or if your lead generation company is not meeting that, you need to have a conversation. I 100% recommend that you use this for your lead generation company too. If you're an OML2 and you're outsourcing to a lead generation company, because that's all you can do right now, and you're trying to bust through that level 2, you need to put them into this scorecard, whether they do it or not, and make sure that they're meeting the metrics. And if they're not, you need to light a fire. Okay, so back at this. So 21 decision makers, they got 9 contract end dates for that week. That is superb. They get a high five for that. Now that you go over here and you look at how many appointments they booked for you, they booked 2 appointments out of 21 decision makers. That's best in class. 10% is best in class. That's very good. They are doing very well for you. So you think, oh my goodness, this person made 400 calls this week, only spoke to 21 people and got 2 appointments. You're freaking out because you're like, oh my goodness, this is not working. They are best in class for everybody right now. This is the entire daily scorecard that you need to manage with this rep. This is how I do it every single day, and this is how I am growing sales reps all over the nation doing this. And if there's any errors in this, please let me know. I built this for everybody, and I don't think there's any errors in any of the formulas, but if there is, let Steve know, let me know, and I'll be more than happy to fix it. So this is the daily and the weekly side. So now let's jump over into the monthly grading side. And there's only 3 things that you need to track on a monthly basis. First thing you need to do before you start using this sheet is you need to find out how much your COGS are for that rep. And my accountant hates this, but I build everything on my rep based on his total cost of me selling this system, me selling what we're doing. And I put this into here because I want to know what is my monthly return on investment for investing into this person. So just put this into the yellow line, drag it over, and then whatever it is, 6,000, 5,500, 7,500, whatever it is, it needs to be your entire thing. To include your lead generation source if that is a sales component. Don't put in your marketing components. That's a different budget. This is all cost of goods sold on the sales side. That's what I use it for. If you're going to do it, that's fine. I'm just telling you how I do it. And when you're going to purchase your next rep, put that line here. If you want to just go back to 0, you can put a 0 in here. I put 7,000 in here so you can see the graph line, but it depends on how aggressive you want to be in your investment into your future part of your company. So every single month, your rep needs to hit 1,000 calls, and I put the benchmarks right here, what they need to do once they get, once they get going, right? It takes about 3 to 4 months for them to get going. And then they just need to put their current month MRR. So if they sell a deal, again, and we're going to use 3,000 as the number, they sell a $3,000 a month deal times 36 months, you just put 3,000 in here, and then it will track it out for you. Then you also put in the project labor, just the labor, and you put in the hardware and software profit, the gross profit. That's what you put in, because again, this has nothing to do with commissions. It's just how much did that rep bring in for you, and how much did you earn off that rep, and is he climbing out of the hole for you? So that's all you need to do. All right, so now let's look at the graph. On the graph piece, so what you're tracking is this green line. And as you put numbers into those green cells, the line will start to come back up and start growing and going back into a positive ROI. And here are my 3 warning tracks. And I show this to the rep every single day and every single week. The graph, I don't really show him until the weekly measures to show him how he's doing. But the daily KPIs, 100% we go through them together. So if they hit this 4-month no money, like they didn't bring any money into me, then this is where they get their first verbal warning, and we put them on a plan. And we show them you're not able to get past the gatekeeper, or you're getting stuck at the decision maker. And then we show them how to do that. And usually what it is, here's another tactic. Usually what it is when they can't get past the gatekeeper is because they're afraid of the first no. And you have to use a system where you try and get 3 no's before you go. So it's a 3 no-go system, 3 no's before you go. And it's the same thing with the decision maker. Usually what I see is the rep has poor product knowledge and they don't know how to ask questions about their environment. For example, so one thing that you could ask right now at the decision maker level or at the gatekeeper level is, with this new normal, how is the transition to, the home environment? Did you guys have to transition to your home environment? How did your MSP handle that? At the gatekeeper level, they'll go, it was a nightmare. And you go, oh man, I hear you. I hear that all the time. Can you put me through to John? And now you have that little nugget in your head that you can talk to the decision maker about. And when you get to the decision maker level, you can say, hey, did your company help you with the new normal, moving your staff to their home offices? Yes. Okay, I can understand that. And we're all happy is what they say. Immediately after that, they did a great job. They did a fantastic job. Okay, well, because everybody went home, here's question number 2. Because everybody went home, did they have to change or implement or do a security assessment to make sure nothing has changed because everybody went home? And was there a process in place for those employees to make sure that little Johnny's not using the work computer at night to play Minecraft? So like those kind of things start popping up, and the rep needs to get past that. And that's simply what usually goes wrong on the decision maker side. The rep just doesn't ask his 3 questions before he moves on. And that's what we have to fix in the plan. And then the last line here, this is tough. This is the tough line. You're making decisions on your family and his family here, or her family here, because this is where people can be terminated. The first thing you want to look at is this person a work ethic person? Are they getting the 100 points per day? Do they have excuses, or are they meeting the metrics that are the norm for the industry right now? Yes, they are. Fantastic. Let's look in deeper. Is this person have a pipeline that 25% of that monthly pipeline will push them back up over this red line? Because here's the thing, just because nothing's closing for this rep, it doesn't necessarily mean it's his fault or her fault. It could be your fault. It could be the sales engineer was picking their nose in the middle of meetings and it's just a terrible wingman. It could mean that the project or the proposal system is terrible and ugly to look at. It could mean that the value proposition wasn't there. There's other things besides the rep, but it's mostly the rep. It's usually the rep that is the problem here. So you need to make sure that you're managing the rep. So it's a thing that you have to look at, and you need to make sure that it's not all being blamed on the rep. You need to look at all sides of it. So I appreciate that, everybody. Like, that's the end of my presentation. I'm sure there's going to be questions, and I know this thing is super complicated. It was hard for me to bring this out and put this into an Excel spreadsheet for everybody to be able to use on their own and be able to take it out there. So if there's ever any questions that you guys have, hit Steve up, copy me on it. If he can't answer it, I'll be more than happy to answer it. If you are with a rep and you've been working with the rep and you have a whole month of data and you're like, hey, Rob, I don't understand why this rep sucks so bad. What am I not seeing? I can look at these scorecards in seconds and tell you what's going on with this rep. And I'll be more than happy to help out, take a look at it and say, what kind of plan this rep needs to work through. Do they suck at active listening? Can we help them there? Can we work better with the gatekeeper? All these things. So if there are any questions, please let me know. But now, Steve, I turn it back over to you, sir. And I wish everybody the best.
Thank you, Rob. Great job. We do have some questions, but we're like less than a minute left.
I'm long-winded, man.
No, you did great. I was on the edge of my seat, and I'm usually snoring waiting till the end of these things. So, when you did the disc, I said, okay, so you love a prospect, think they're great, tell a good story, personality's there, you bring them in for disc, and they're ending up like a high C. You rejecting?
Oh yeah, high C. And here's why, Steve. Unless they have a proven track record in the MSP industry at one of my competitors, and I can call one of my competitors and say, hey, this person doesn't seem like they are hardcore sales. Is this person what I'm looking for on the hunter side? Unless somebody I know says this person's good, I'm not taking the risk. Because again, they may be great, but I don't have the risk tolerance to wait 6 months if I make a bad hire, to to wait when I'm 65, have to wait even longer. So I would decline that risk.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for sharing the spreadsheet. I think it's going to be great for our members. Those that are not members but are on this call, you will receive it too. So I want to thank everybody for their time today. We certainly hope the information you received was actionable and helpful. For those not already participating in one of our peer groups, please reach out to us so that we can discuss the value along with our money back guarantee. Rob, Naj, thank you very much for your time and expertise. We really appreciate it. Have a great rest of the day, everyone.
All right.
Thanks, Steve.